A pleasant day to each and everyone. I'm Jeline and Primo, one of the presenters for this week reporting, and our topic is about English for specific purposes. But first, before I start this discussion, I want everyone to have some short and brief introduction about specific purposes of English or the ESP. ESP is an approach to the education that have specific purposes from its word specific. Basically, it's apply in specific areas like, for instances, scientific, technological, economic, and academic areas that use English as its language is the English for specific purposes. It is also used for practice to certain professional areas, like when we are in our grade 12 or grade 12 senior high school. It's also in our curriculum titled the English for academic purposes or the EAP subject, that we, the students, practice our own English for specific subject in our class. The origin of the ESP is directly linked to the history of the 20th century. The English language became that international language, and this means for the English language some concrete needs that have driven an advance in the field of linguistics through the study of ideas, new theories, and about language and learning, and change in the methodology and implementation of teaching English. The ESP over the years has gone through 5 stages, which is, according to Hutchinson and Waiters 1987, it is that take shape in 5 approaches or theories. This is the stages and approaches in the development of ESP. First is the register analysis. Second is the rhetorical or discourse analysis. Third is the target situation analysis. Fourth is the skills and strategies. And last but not the least is a learning-centered approaches. The first approach in development of ESP is the register analysis. Register analysis has been defined by Michael Halliday as an attempt to analyze the linguistic foundations of language we use in the given situations and the way in which the language we speak or write varies according to the type of situation. The main motive behind register analysis was the pedagogic objective of making the ESP course more relevant to learners' needs. Second one is the rhetorical or discourse analysis. The development shifted attention to the level above the sentence as ESP became closely involved with the emerging field of discourse or rhetorical analysis. It focuses to understand how sentences were combined in discourse to produce meaning, therefore to identify the organizational patterns in text and to specify the linguistic means by which these patterns are assigned. This fact consequently could not be solved by a course that simply provide further practice in the composition of sentences, but only by one which developed knowledge of how sentences are used in the performance of different communicative acts. The third one is the target situation analysis. It was the aim to take students' existing knowledge and setting it on a more scientific basis by establishing procedures for relating language analysis more closely to learners' reasons for learning. In ESP course, there will be a process of knowing students' purpose to learn English, known as need analysis or target situation analysis. Target situation analysis will lead the teacher to form a syllabus, to design or produce a detailed profile for the learner's need in terms of communication purposes, communicative settings, the means of communication, language skills, functions, structures, and etc. It was designed to identify the motivations of the students to learn the language and the situation in which they would use it in future. The second approach in development of ESP is the skills and strategies. This approach concentrated its efforts on reading and listening strategies. The principal idea behind the skills and strategies approach is the underlying all languages use. There are common reasoning and interpreting processes which enable learners to extract meaning from discourse. The last approach to development of ESP is the learning-centered approach. This approach is the question of how to teach and how to learn to acquire more relevance than the language it uses and the contents. This approach is based on the principle that learning is totally determined by the learners. The learning is seen as a process in which the learners use what knowledge or skills they have in order to make sense of the flow or new information. The organizing courses is one of your main tasks will be selecting, designing, and organizing course materials, supporting the students in their efforts and providing them with feedback on their progress. ESP assess needs and integrates motivation, subject matter, and content for the teaching of relevant skills. And the responsibility of the teacher is that teacher should recognize the ways in which her teaching skills can be adapted for the teaching of English for specific purposes. Moreover, she will need to look for content specialized for help in designing appropriate lesson in the subject matter field she is teaching. As an ESP teacher, you must play many roles. You may be asked to organize courses, to set learning objectives to establish a positive learning environment in the classroom and to evaluate students' progress.
So hello everyone, my name is Remoto, and to continue the discussion of Miss Primo, I am going to discuss the setting goals and objectives, but before that, I am going to give you an insight or background about this topic. So when we say goal, it is an achievable outcome that is generally broad and longer term, while an objectives is shorter term and defines measurable actions to achieve an overall goal. So the first setting goals and objectives is creating a learning environment. So in this, the teacher should create an atmosphere in the language classroom that supports that students. Learners must be self-confident in order to communicate, and you have the responsibility to help build the learner's confidence. So in this, it is important to nurture the students of using the language, of having the nature that they will not shy of using English language, because it is important to have a self-esteem to communicate with other people. Evaluating the students. So in this, the teacher is a resource that helps students to identify their language learning problems and finding solutions to them. Finding out the skills they need to focus on and taking responsibility for making choices that determine what and how to learn. So in this, the teacher should evaluate the students by having a judgment for them to have an improvement of what they need to change, what they need to improve, what they need to learn, and what the learning strategies they need to possess in order for them to have a better learning of using the language. So the next setting goals and objective is the responsibility of the students. So in this, they are in charge of developing English language skills to reflect their native language, knowledge, and skills. So we all know that native language is the language that we are using in our daily lives. It is also our mother tongue. So for you to develop more and to reflect to an English language, you should also have knowledge about your native language in order for you to develop your English language skills. Is interest for learning. So in this, the students will acquire English as they work with materials that they find interesting and relevant and that they can use in their professional work or further studies. The more learners pay attention to the meaning of the language they hear or read, the more they are successful. Is subject content knowledge. So in this, knowledge of the subject area enables the students to identify the real context for the vocabulary and structures of the English for specific purposes classroom. The last is the learning strategies. So in this, the skills they have already developed in using their native languages will make learning English easier. They are constantly expanding their vocabulary, becoming more fluent in their fields, and adjusting their linguistic behavior to new situations or new roles. Strategies include metacognitive, affective, and social strategies. Metacognitive strategies include manipulating language, knowledge, and cognitive functions in language learning and used through organizing, planning, and evaluating one's learning process.
Thank you for listening.